Hello, everybody, and welcome to our session today. So today we want to discuss about logs and runs. So this is session number 8. So we did cover a lot so far. Now the agenda for today is to talk about runs, what they are, logs, also explain a bit more, then how to find errors, how to look into, how to resolve them or diagnose any issues there. And then I will show you within MyRapidi, we'll go through logs and runs so you can have a visual of how things are there. Then any questions, if you have any questions or anything, you can use the chat and add them there. Then we'll show the upcoming sessions that we have. And of course, last but not least, we'll have resources that you might find useful for this particular topic. Now, let's look a bit at runs. Okay, so first we do have to define what a run is, so it makes sense to everybody. So a run is just a single, one, execution event. So this means that it groups everything that happened in that specific moment when your group or transfer ran, right? So as you know, in Rapidi, you have schedules. So you run schedules based on a specific frequency. So whenever the schedule runs, then you will have this run, right? For every single time the schedule actually completed. So if you have a schedule that's running every hour, then you would see a run for every single hour. And then when you look into it, you'll see what was the status of that. The same thing happens with individual transfers. So if you have a schedule for just one transfer, then you would see the same information. And then again, the same thing, you would have the run information if you manually run a transfer by yourself, right? So if you go into Rapidi, you want to test some things or you want to do something else, then you just run it and then you will have the same information. So then why do we use runs at all? So first, when you have your runs there on your service, you are able to track any executions. So this means that you can see everything that ran, right? You can look at what has run since yesterday morning until today. So it's a way for you to see everything in chronological order. You can see date, time, source, and destination. And of course, you can track any executions for any schedules or any transfers. Then the second thing about it is that via the runs, you can spot errors. You can see exactly what the situation is. So you'll have that status icon, right? The green, the red one, right? That would tell you what's happening there. So if it's green, then it would be okay. It means everything is okay. If it's red, it will be an error. So that needs to be looked into. And then if you see it in yellow, that means processing. It means that when you are looking at it, it's trying to transfer data. So it gives you this information about how things are going with your specific schedule. Then another thing that you can see via a run would be the way to measure duration. So any run that you have then will also indicate how much time it took. For example, you might transfer, let's say, customers, right, back and forth, and then you can see in Rapidi, okay, this took, 10 minutes, or it took 5 minutes. So then you can definitely see if you have any slow transfers or if you have any performance issues. Of course, when it comes to duration and the time that the run takes, you also have to make sure that on your transfers, you do use daytime fields, of course, and then you, for example, also can use filters, additional filters, so then you transfer only what's needed. But again, when you look at the duration, then you can definitely understand what goes well and what doesn't. And then, of course, the last but not least point is that you can drill into detail. So when you go to your runs in Rapidi, you can jump from that run directly into the log entries that belong to that specific run. So then when you go into the log entries, you will have this full breakdown, right, of all the transfers that run and what the situation is. So that would be, I would say, in a nutshell, what the run is. And then, of course, linked to a run, then we have logs. So they go hand in hand. So then a log entry, this is like a more detailed information about what happened inside a run. So the run would be like the parent, right? And then within that, then you get to see all these log entries that are relevant for every single transfer. So here you would see every message, you would see the record count, the error message, and then any performance issues with that specific transfer. And then the question is, why do we use them? Well, first, we use them because we can diagnose errors, right? When you go into logs, you get to see the full error message. You can see what the issue is, and also you can see that, okay, you have an error message, but also which is the transfer that this error is linked to. So it gives you like pinpoints to the issue that you might have there. And then also, as part of logs, then you can, I would say, audit record counts. You would see like an overview of what has been read, what has been inserted, updated, deleted. So it gives you that overview of what happened and how many records went through. Then you also have the option to filter and search, right? Because you might have a long list of logs, so you want to look at specific time periods. So you can put filters and say, I want to see all logs between this morning and 2 p.m. This afternoon. So then by doing that, you would see only the logs linked to that specific time period. Then you can also filter by transfers, by schedules, by date ranges, like I said, connections, or by error status. For example, you want to look at the logs where you have error messages, right? So then you would filter on that, and then you only see those specific entries. So so then in the end, you don't need to scroll and go through all of them. So you can always filter so you get the exact logs that you need. And of course, via logs, you have this the possibility to trace like a full run, because you have the run, right, which is the parent, and then part of it, you can see all the logs. So it gives you the possibility to see, okay, I can track what happened here. I can see how many records were sent, and I can see where the error is actually showing up. So it would give you the full picture of that run, and then what happened on each transfer, I would say. Then when it comes to finding and diagnosing errors, of course, when something happens, when the schedule fails, for example, or when your transfer fails, when you run it manually, then Rapidi will give you some signals about that. Now, when it comes to errors in general, then you would be able to spot the error under runs, right? Because your schedules would show that red icon there, right? So that indicates that there is an error on that specific schedule. Now, of course, you have to go and find the error and see which is the transfer that has that issue. So then when you go to runs, you have that red icon flag that will indicate just that. And then you will be able to actually dive into the full details. Now, after you go to runs, you can expand that, and then you will see all the logs associated with that. So then when you expand it, you would see additional details, like more information about the transfers that you have in there. The thing is that when you have schedules running, you might have 5 transfers, right? Running as part of the same group. So you would have, let's say, the customer group that's running as a schedule. And then when you have errors, then you have to see which is the transfer that has that error, because it can be transfer number 4, right? So then you have to expand that section and see exactly which is the one that has an issue. And then when you get to the logs, to the detailed section, then you can read the error messages. Now, when it comes to error messages, you might see differences between I would say ERPs and CRMs, right? Because there are systems that will always give you a very detailed error message. So they would include a lot of information. So that helps you to actually find the record that has that issue and resolve it. But you also have systems that give you like very short cryptic error messages, and and then it's very hard for you to actually understand what that is. Now, of course, there are admins on Rapidi that know how to troubleshoot because they know their systems, but also there are admins or users that are not very familiar with that. So if you have error messages that really, are not very clear or detailed, you can try to use Albert. So what you can do, you can open a chat, right, with Albert and ask him about that specific error message. Albert is connected to our wiki, so it should be able to give you some recommendations or try to help with that specific error message. Of course, even though it doesn't resolve everything, then it would still be able to give give you some possibilities and say, hey, you can try this, and see if this in the end resolves the issue that you are having. So that would be a good way to troubleshoot. Of course, if you want to search for that specific error message, you can also use our wiki, right? So on our wiki, you can just add some keywords from the error message, and then you should get some articles in there. If you do not get something very specific, then I think the last point would be to reach out to support and say, okay, I tried to resolve this, but it didn't work. So then you can reach out to us so we can help you with that. So you have several options, I would say, but I think my advice is to try to use Albert for any error messages that you might have, and then you can see, how the conversation goes and what kind of recommendations you get from it. Now I will show you within MyRapidi. Let me see. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. Okay, so here I'm on my test service and I went to runs, right? So this is the place where you would see all the runs on your service. So the idea here is that you can get to runs via different ways. So this is the main page, right? It would be logs, runs, but you can also get here from the schedules. So if you are on the schedules page and you need to go to runs, then you see here you have this icon that would say show runs for the schedule. So you click on it and you see this. So this would show you the particular runs for that specific schedule. If you just want to see all runs, no matter what, no matter who the schedule is, then you just go to logs and go to runs, right? Because this would show the full page. There's no filter. There's nothing in here. But in case you want to have like a simple process, you just use schedules, and then from the schedules, you can check every schedule and its associated runs. Now, the main page would be this one here. And as you can see, you have certain information available. So in here, you would see the date and time, right? And then you would see an S, which actually stands for schedule. So this is a schedule that is running every hour. So then I would be able to see the runs here. Then the one that says M, it stands for manual. So this is either a transfer or changes that I have made on that specific transfer. So I activated changes on that after any mapping updates. So then you can tell the difference between the two. Now, in both cases, you would see date and time, the source, of course, destination, and then description. Description here would be, so in case you have a schedule running, would be the actual schedule name. And then if it's a transfer that you are running manually, it would be just the transfer name here. So that's something that you would see. And then here at the end, you would see the duration, how much time it took, and then the status of it, right? If you see this green check mark, it means it's all good. This one ran without issues. If you see this red one, it means that something went wrong, so it has to be checked. Now, When it comes to the runs and how they are linked to logs, so from this page, you can expand this one here, and then you actually see the logs that belong to the specific run, right? So you can either do this right from the runs page, or you just go to logs, which is right next to it, and filter on what you need. But I think it's definitely easier to do it from the runs page, because then you would see the exact logs for that specific run. So here you would see daytime, you would see the transfer, right? You see the source, destination, and then I would say the updates that were happening, right? So in this case, you would see how many records were read, how many updated, added, and deleted. Now, when you have multiple transfers within the same run, then you would see multiple entries. So like in this case, you would see transfer like customer 01, like I have here, and then you would see the next one below, customer 02. So it would continue until all the transfers ran completely. So then when you have an error message, the error would point to that exact transfer. And of course, does that. And then we have, so if we close this one and we go to the one that has an error, for example, so I have this one that I run manually, right? And then this is the error message that I have, right? So then this is associated with this specific transfer. So if you have multiple transfers in a schedule, then you just need to go to the one that has this error message written in red. If you have 5 transfers, like, and 4 of them went okay, but the last one, the 5th, has this error message, it means that you need to focus on that specific transfer. So in this case, now, as I mentioned before, error messages can be very detailed or they can be very cryptic. So very much depends on the system that you are using. In this case, I think the error message can be understood to a certain extent. For example, I would say, okay, in this case, we have the code for it would say internal record not found. So this means that the specific record that I'm trying to get is not there, right? And then you get the message, which is the additional information, I would say, that the system gives you about that specific record. So and then it would say, this one does not exist, and the field and values are this ones here. So then you get specific information about the records that maybe you are trying to read from, or maybe you are trying to do something else. The idea is that like in some cases it's very easy to understand it, in other cases it's not that easy. But of course, what you can do in a situation where you do not know what to do with it, you can just copy the error and open a chat with Albert. You have it here as well. And then you can ask him about this specific error, and then you should get recommendations about what can be done or what the issue might be for that specific system. And then what you are going to see here is this last piece that says error on this connection. So it will tell you which is the connection that sent this error message, right? So that's something that, for example, if you are setting up a filter on a transfer, right? But that record, like in this case, does not exist anymore, then the source system, like in this case, we have BC, will give you that error and will say, this record is not found, or any other error. So it will point you to the system that's giving you that error. So then you have to focus on that one. If you are sending information to a different system, right? And then the destination system does not like that information, then the error will be written into this log here. And then it will say something like error on connection, but it would be like HubSpot, for example. So it will tell you where to look for that specific issue. Now here on any I would say runs page, you have certain filters that you can use. So here you have the date filters. So you can narrow down everything that you want to look at. If you want to look at something that ran today, you can put filters, and then this list will be updated. And then if you want to filter on schedules, right, you can also do that. You can select any of the schedules from the list, and it will show you only the runs for those schedules. Then here you have groups. If you want to look at groups, for example, you can also do that. Here next you have transfers. So this would show you a list with all the transfers. So if you want to see one in particular, you can select it from here. Then you have sources. If you want to filter on a source, you can do that. It's up to you. And then we have destination. And then we have this one that would allow you to filter on, the ones that have been successfully completed or the ones that have error messages. And then you have the search bar where you can search for keywords that are available in the logs here or in the runs. So you have multiple filters that you can use so that you can narrow down. But like I said before, if you go back to schedules and you go here to runs, then you already have a filter set on this specific schedule, right? And then from this page, you can add more filters. So then you get what you need for, maybe you need to look at something specific. Now, when it comes to schedules, you can also go from, you can actually go to logs, right? So you have here runs, as you can see, and then you have here transfers and runs. So you have runs and logs. So here, as you can see all the logs. So there are a lot of them, but you have the filtering options the same as runs. So you don't need to go through 50 pages. You can definitely put filters and get to the exact transfer that you need. And of course, you can look at any information that's needed. One thing I wanted to mention here is that there are situations when the error messages coming from some systems are not very clear. And they don't really tell you which is the record that has a specific issue. So in our case, you can use a message formula, right? That can be added on your transfer. And then in that message formula, you can specify the field that you want to be shown here. So then when you use it on a transfer, then whenever it runs, it will show the values that exist in that field. Like, for example, transferring customers, you would just put the message formula on the transfer and saying, I want to, adding the customer number field in there. And then when this runs, you would see this information. And you can add that message formula for other things. If you want to see specific information about what is being transferred, you can add those. And then this can definitely be helpful when you will try to troubleshoot a specific record, because you will already have additional information in the logs. For this one, I think it will be definitely useful to use it. We have added this data or this article to our resources, so you can definitely try to add that formula and see how data is being displayed here in the logs. I think that's it for our logs. Let's see if we have any questions. Okay. Yeah, so we went through that. So if you have any questions about the walkthrough, just let me know. But I think we covered most of it. And then we are going to share more information, like more details about logs, runs, and how things work there. And then, of course, we have next sessions. So here you have the full page with all the sessions, complete season, and then the next one would be about link storages, which I think is a very interesting topic, and we do get a lot of questions about it. So we'll do that, and we'll go through that piece. And then the complete schedule here. So you can see we have other sessions scheduled. So feel free to register. So if you need to attend anyone, any in particular, do that. And then we'll go through that functionality. If you have any feedback, or maybe you want us to cover specific topics or something in particular, just use the feedback form, add your comments, and then we'll go through that. And then here we have the resources, as usual, documentation. So if you're using our wiki, great. But if you are not finding a specific type of information, just reach out, let me know, because I can definitely update or maybe add more content. Then you have support. You can reach out if you have any issues. We have product updates, so you can subscribe so you get a lot of good content into your inbox, and the release notes that we always update so that you can see what we have worked on, any new fixes, any new functionalities. So you can definitely check this out. And I think for this session, we have these resources. So I added a bit of information about runs, logs, the message formula, which I think that can be helpful, the transfer runs, and of course, how to get logs via REST API, in case someone needs that part. I think we do have customers that do it, but you never know. Maybe it's something that you want to do later on. And I think that was it for our session. If you have any question, any concern, feel free to reach out. We will be more than happy to get back to you. And with that being said, thank you for watching. Thank you for staying until the end. And well, I guess I will see you next week if you plan to attend the other session. Until then, have a great week and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.